They say love is patient. Love is kind. Love keeps no record of wrongs. But whoever said that never had to co-sign a business loan for a man who called you his teammate and meant temporary investor. I met Ryan at a tech networking mixer I wasn't even supposed to attend. It was a Thursday night, and I was exhausted from back-to-back meetings. But my roommate bribed me with wine and told me it would get me out of my spreadsheet head. She was right, kind of. The room was full of tech bros with identical haircuts and matching startup pitches. I was seconds from sneaking out when I bumped into him. Literally. Spilled half my drink on his jacket. He laughed. Well, now we've bonded over red wine and embarrassment. I apologized. He made a joke. I laughed too hard. He noticed. And then we talked. Not about code, not about VC rounds, but about how awkward networking events are and how neither of us knew half the buzzwords people were throwing around. He was warm in a way that felt real. He asked me about my job. I worked in content marketing and didn't make that face most guys made when I said I loved writing emails that made people click. He listened, actually listened. That night he walked me to my car. He didn't ask for my number. He gave me his, said, "If you want to talk more, I'd like that, but no pressure." I texted him the next day. Our first date was coffee. Second was tacos. Third was a long walk where we didn't check our phones once. He remembered the name of my cat, the kind of tea I liked, that my dad had passed away when I was 16. He didn't flinch when I told him I had trust issues. He just nodded and said, "That makes sense." By the fourth week, I caught myself smiling before every text I sent. By the second month, he was brushing his teeth at my apartment more often than at his. By the third, he moved in. It was fast, but it didn't feel reckless. It felt settled, safe. Ryan wasn't loud. He didn't sweep me off my feet. He held my hand when I was stressed, made breakfast when I overslept, told me often and plainly that he believed in me. He said I had a good head for business, that I was the kind of woman who made things better. "You're not just smart," he said one night as we folded laundry. "You're the kind of woman people build empires with." Looking back, I wonder if that was the moment he chose me, not as a partner, as a strategy. He proposed on our 1-year anniversary. It was a quiet night at home. No flash, no drama. He made dinner, lit candles, and gave me a ring I'd never seen before. "Let's build something real," he said. I was crying before I even said yes. I dated boys who loved their reflection more than they'd ever love another person. Ryan wasn't like that. He was steady, kind, focused, driven, or so I thought. We got married 2 months later. City Hall, simple dresses, a tiny cake, just us and the photographer he found on Craigslist. He said we'd do a big ceremony later when things settled. I didn't mind. I was 31, in love, and ready for the next chapter. Besides, we were both building something now. He just launched his startup, an e-commerce back-end system for small brands. I didn't really understand it, but he talked about it with fire in his eyes. He was funding it through a mix of savings, a couple of friends, and a small bank loan. But the bank wanted one more name on the LLC, someone with better credit. He didn't pressure me, at least not directly. Just said, "You don't have to, babe. I can figure something else out. But they really just need a name. It doesn't even mean anything." He looked tired. He'd been working weekends, skipping meals, canceling plans. I hated seeing him like that, so I said yes. My name went on the LLC, then the business account, then a personal loan to cover some unexpected dev costs. "It's just temporary," he promised. "Once we get our first round of funding, we're golden." The thing is, I believed him, because he still kissed me goodnight, still left notes on the fridge when he had early meetings, still asked about my day, even when his had clearly sucked. That's how they get you, I think. Not with cruelty, with consistency. The first year of marriage was hard. He was always working. I was juggling 2 freelance clients on top of my job to help cover the bills. We barely saw each other. Barely touched, but I didn't complain. Not once. Because that's what building a life looks like, right? You sacrifice now to win later. That's what I told myself, over and over and over. About a year and a half into the marriage, the red flags stopped being subtle. Ryan began coming home later. He stopped explaining where he'd been. He became evasive about the business. Once, when I asked about a charge on our joint card, he laughed and said, "You wouldn't get it, babe, it's dev stuff." I didn't press. I didn't want to be that wife. The paranoid one, the insecure one, the nag. Instead, I cleaned up his messes, balanced our books, adjusted my freelance schedule to make up for what he couldn't contribute this month. Every time I expressed concern, he reminded me of his vision, how close he was to landing a deal, how lucky he was to have someone like me who believed in him. And I did, until I started believing in myself more. The first real break came one night when he left his laptop open on the kitchen counter. I wasn't snooping. I was reaching for the oat milk, but the screen lit up and curiosity blinked at me. There was a folder titled Proposals Alt. I clicked. Inside were 3 PDFs, business proposals. Except my name wasn't on any of them. Not on the company registration, not on the co-founding credits, not on the financials. Just Ryan and an unfamiliar name, Maya Benson. I froze. I hadn't heard the name before. She wasn't on any pitch decks I'd seen. She wasn't a partner in the legal sense. But she was listed in every plan as creative lead, branding partner, future CEO. I stared at the document until the letters blurred. Then I emailed it to myself, just in case. I didn't confront him, not yet. I needed more, because some part of me, the part that still slept beside him, the part that still kissed him goodbye in the mornings, wanted this to be explainable, fixable. But deep down, I knew I was no longer building with him. I was building for him. Over the next few weeks, I started digging, not obsessively, quietly, intentionally. He was out more and more meeting investors, sourcing talent, pitching new clients. But I tracked the spending, found the transfers. He was moving money from our joint account to a business card I hadn't known existed. He was paying invoices under her name. And worst of all, he was planning a brand launch party. One that I wasn't invited to, because I was never supposed to be part of the brand, just the balance sheet. Still, I didn't break. I documented. I met with a lawyer, started asking quiet questions at the bank, requested transaction records. It was like following a trail of ash back to the fire I didn't even know had started. The final blow came on our 3rd wedding anniversary. D told me he had to travel last minute. Investor in Seattle, too important to reschedule. I pretended to believe him, made myself a quiet dinner, opened a bottle of wine, sat on the couch and waited, not for him, for confirmation. At 8:47 p.m., my friend Emily texted me a screenshot. It was from Instagram, a tagged story, a wedding. Ryan, wearing the same suit he'd worn at our wedding, standing under a floral arch, holding hands with Maya Benson, kissing her. The caption, "So proud to finally marry my best friend, my partner in everything. Here S to forever." I didn't cry, not at first. I laughed. The kind of laugh that breaks something on the way out, because it wasn't just betrayal. It was betrayal funded by me. My name was on the LLC, on the accounts, on the contracts, but not on the wedding invite, not on the story, not in the story, just behind it, supporting it, like scaffolding they forgot to take down. That night I didn't text him, didn't call. I called my lawyer and said, "Let's begin." Some people scream when they're betrayed. Some throw plates, keys, fists. I got quiet. The night I saw Ryan marry another woman, I didn't cry, I didn't text him. I didn't scream into a pillow. I opened my laptop. If he thought I would burn down everything in a fit of rage, he didn't know me at all. I wasn't going to burn it. I was going to document it. Line by line, transaction by transaction, lie by lie. I started with the basics. I pulled up the LLC documents. I hadn't looked at them since I signed. Turns out my name wasn't just listed as a co-signer. I was the majority owner. Ryan had set it up that way for credit purposes. It gave the bank more confidence to see a female primary, he once said. I thought it was sweet. Now I saw it for what it was, a loophole, a weapon he thought he could control. But that paper was going to save me or destroy him. Possibly both. I printed every document, every invoice I could find, every signed receipt, every statement with my name attached to a payment. The ring on her finger, bought with the company card. The event space, company funded. The wine. The tux, the flowers, all of it, paid for by a company owned on paper by me. I dug deeper, bank transfers. The business trip to Seattle, he'd booked a luxury suite 2 cities away, 2 people on the reservation, room service for 2. Champagne, a spa appointment in her name. I printed it all, color-coded, chronologically sorted, stapled. I had never been this organized in my life. Pain has a way of turning you into an efficiency machine. Next step, I called a lawyer. A real one, not the cheap legal advice line I'd used to file our marriage paperwork. I found her through a women's legal support forum. Her bio said, I help women untangle themselves from fraud, abuse, and manipulation. Sold, her name was Eliza, sharp eyes, no-nonsense voice. I told her everything, she didn't blink. Do you have proof? She asked. I slid the binder across her desk. She raised an eyebrow. This is impressive. I shrugged. I write marketing plans for a living. This one just happens to be for war. Eliza leaned back. What do you want out of this? A fair question. I hadn't really asked myself. Revenge, closure, justice. I want to stop being the footnote in my own life, I said. She nodded. Then let's take your name back, legally, financially, publicly. I didn't smile, but something deep in my chest began to breathe again. Over the next few weeks, we met regularly. She walked me through every document. We filed motions, froze the business account temporarily, drafted a cease and desist to Maya just to get her rattled. Ryan still didn't know. He hadn't contacted me, no text, no email, not even a fake apology, which told me everything I needed to know about how little he valued what we had or what I'd done. He thought I'd just fade, disappear. Let him rewrite the story. I stayed quiet, but not idle. I created a new bank account, moved what little I could from the joint account before freezing it. I called the credit bureaus, flagged potential fraud, filed a separate marital asset claim. Eliza said we had a strong case. Especially if we can prove intent, she added. Intent was the hardest part. You can't sue someone for breaking your heart, but you can sue them for misappropriating funds. And that's exactly what we were building. Meanwhile, I kept going to work, kept smiling at clients, kept answering emails. The world didn't stop just because mine did. That's the thing no one tells you about betrayal. You still have to show up, still have to feed the cat, pay rent, wash your hair. Nobody hands you a your husband married someone else day off, so I worked and plotted and healed, all at the same time. Then 3 weeks after the wedding, he called. I stared at the screen for a full minute, blocked number, but I knew it was him. I answered. Hey. His voice was casual. I said nothing. You, got time to talk? Still nothing. I know this is weird. I finally spoke. Weird isn't the word I'd use. A pause. I was gonna tell you. Before or after the honeymoon. He sighed. It wasn't like that. I hung up. The next morning, he showed up at my apartment, knocked like he lived there. I didn't open the door. He slid a note under it, said he wanted to talk like adults. I slid it right back out. It was blank. Later that week, we served him the papers. Through Eliza's office, asset division, breach of marital contract, fraudulent transfer of funds. The look on his face, according to Eliza's assistant, was comically pale. Good. Let him choke on the taste of consequences. By week 5, Maya reached out, through email, short, panicked. I didn't know, I swear, he said you were separated. I didn't reply. Let her sit with it. She chose him. Now she gets the rest of him. The lawsuits, the debt, the silence, all of it. I wasn't done yet, because the next step wasn't legal. It was personal, and it was coming. I never wanted a company. I just wanted a partner. But now that I had both, whether I wanted to or not, I wasn't going to let either one be stolen. After Ryan was served, things got quiet. Too quiet, he didn't call. Didn't text, didn't show up again. And that silence wasn't relief. It was calculation. I knew Ryan. When he went quiet, it wasn't shame. It was strategy, which meant he was trying to figure out how to erase me without setting off alarms. Too late. I was the alarm now. Eliza and I went into offensive mode. She filed an emergency motion to freeze all remaining company funds, citing financial misconduct and fraudulent misrepresentation of marital assets. We also filed to have Ryan temporarily removed from operational authority until a full hearing. He tried to fight it, of course, filed a countersuit, claimed I'd abandoned the business, that I was emotionally unstable. Standard playbook, paint the woman as unfit, irrational, hysterical. But Eliza came ready with a 47-page binder. Receipts, statements, time-stamped bank activity, contracts, and most importantly, the original LLC registration paperwork with my name as primary owner. The judge didn't smile, but he didn't hesitate either. Until the legal status of the marriage and asset division is resolved, he said, all company operations are to be overseen by the legally registered managing member, Ms. Elaine. That's me. I didn't smile either, but inside, I stood a little taller. I walked into the office 2 days later. It was the first time I'd ever been there. Ryan had always said he worked from wherever, that the company was remote first, mostly virtual. But now, standing in that rented third-floor co-working space, I realized he just didn't want me to see it, didn't want me to see that it was real, or that I was real enough to matter in it. There were 6 employees. They looked shocked to see me, but polite. I introduced myself as the managing owner. No one argued. They'd heard whispers. They'd seen the papers. A few looked relieved. One woman, Claire, offered me a tour. I accepted. She showed me the conference room, the product roadmap, the Slack channels, the things I'd never been invited into. Then she paused outside the creative suite. "That's Maya's desk," she said. I nodded, didn't ask, didn't need to. Her desk was cleared out. Guess she didn't want to face the music. I called a company-wide meeting for the next morning. Mandatory, all hands. At 9 a.m. sharp, everyone was seated. And I walked in, not as the ex-wife, but as the majority shareholder. "Hi," I said. "I'm Lane. Most of you probably know me only as a name on paper. I'm here today to clarify a few things." No one interrupted. I explained the legal transition, that Ryan had stepped away temporarily, that we were auditing all financial activity, that no one's job was at risk unless they had something to hide. Then I paused and smiled. My goal isn't to burn this place down. It's to build something honest with the ashes. They clapped, not out of fear, out of relief. Over the next 2 weeks, I took over operations. Not because I wanted to be CEO, because I needed to protect what was left. The company had good bones, the tech was decent, the people were smart, they just needed structure, leadership, accountability. 3 things Ryan had never cared about. I hired a forensic accountant, gave her access to everything. She found over $38,000 in undocumented consulting fees sent to Maya over 14 months. Also found dozens of reimbursement charges that had no receipts. Flights, dinners, hotels, all under client development. All lies. We packaged it into a supplemental filing. Eliza smirked. "This is going to sting." I hoped it did. Then came the part I hadn't planned for. Media. A business blog picked up the story, leaked from an anonymous source. Not me, but I had a guess. They ran a piece titled, "From Startup Wife to Startup CEO, How one woman took back her company after betrayal. It went semi-viral. I started getting DMs, emails, invitations to speak. People wanted my side, but I wasn't ready to tell it, not yet. Not until I'd finished writing it on my terms. That's when Ryan finally reached out. Not a call, not a visit, an email, short. "You made your point, can we talk now?" I didn't reply. Instead, I printed it, added it to the binder, proof that I had power now, that he knew it. Then Maya emailed again, this time longer. Apologetic, panicked. She asked to meet, said she didn't want to be part of something ugly. I replied with a single sentence, "You already are." Meanwhile, back at the company, things started working. Like, really working. We landed 2 new clients, streamlined our billing system, restructured the team. I even found myself enjoying it. Not the revenge, the rebuilding. The sense that maybe this company could be more than the weapon Ryan used to manipulate me. Maybe it could be mine. One Friday, I stayed late. The office was quiet. Claire brought me tea. She hesitated at the door. "Just wanted to say it's better now, with you." I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. She smiled, left. And for the first time in months, I exhaled. Not in sadness, not in anger, in clarity, because the shift had happened. I wasn't his wife anymore. I wasn't even his ex-wife. I was something else now, something stronger. And I was just getting started. For every move you make in silence, the world will try to shout over you when you finally speak. And that's exactly what happened. Because as soon as I stepped into my own power, Ryan tried to take it back. It started small. A mutual friend texted me, "Hey, I ran into Ryan. He said you're going overboard, that you're still hurt and taking it out on him legally." I stared at the screen, not surprised, just irritated. He wasn't denying what he did. He was rewriting why I was responding. That's how men like him survive. They reduce the fire they started to your smoke. Then it got louder. Someone sent me a clip from a podcast, a tech bros circle talk. Ryan was on it. I didn't even know he'd been invited. The host introduced him as a startup founder going through some personal transitions. And then Ryan said, "Breakups are hard, especially when people hold on to pain and try to make it professional. I've always tried to separate my personal life from the business, but not everyone has that maturity." I laughed out loud. Then I sent the clip to Eliza. She didn't laugh. "Defamation lawsuit?" I asked. "Not worth it," she replied. "He's already digging his own grave. Let's give him the shovel." But it wasn't just public spin. Behind the scenes, he filed a countermotion. He claimed I forged signatures, that I never contributed meaningfully to the business, that I used the company card without authorization. Projection at its finest. Eliza was ready. She filed a 67-page rebuttal. Included screenshots, timestamps, bank logs, emails. Even Maya's original "thank you for investing in us" note sent to my email. Nailed it to the wall. Still, the hearing was tense. Ryan showed up in a gray suit, looked thinner. Still smug. He tried to make eye contact. I didn't flinch. I wore black, simple, clean, composed. Let him be the one sweating. The judge listened, took notes, didn't smile once, then ruled in our favor again. I remained managing member. Company operations stayed under my control. Ryan was restricted from accessing financials without court permission. It was a win, a clear one, but it didn't feel like a finish line. It felt like a checkpoint. That night, Ryan texted me, "Can we please just talk? No lawyers, just us." I ignored it. Then he emailed, "You don't need to destroy everything. We can fix this. Together, you still matter to me." I stared at that line. You still matter to me. Funny how that sentiment only showed up after the power shift. I didn't reply. But I did start to feel the fatigue. Revenge isn't a clean burn. It's messy, exhausting. And when you're a woman trying to reclaim what was yours in the first place, there's always someone telling you you've done too much. I started second-guessing. Not my case, but my stamina. Could I keep this up? Could I keep fighting a man who still had friends in high places? still had charm, still had enough nerve to paint himself as the victim. I talked to Eliza. She listened, then said, "You don't owe him anything, not clarity, not closure, not even kindness." I nodded, but I still went home and cried, just a little, just enough to release it. Then came Maya, again. This time she showed up at the office. Claire buzzed me. "There's a woman downstairs. Says her name is Maya Benson." My stomach clenched. I told her to send her up. Let's get this over with. She walked in wearing sunglasses and shame, took them off slowly. Her eyes were red. "Can I sit?" I nodded. She did. Then said, "I didn't know he was married. I didn't know you existed until after we were engaged." I believed her, not because she seemed broken, but because I remembered being lied to by the same mouth. "He said you were a business partner, that the marriage was old paperwork. He told me you were." She stopped. "Unwell." I raised an eyebrow. She winced. "I should have checked. I should have asked." I leaned forward. "Why are you here, Maya?" She looked away. "I want out of the company, of the connection, of him." "Then leave," I said. "I need help." I waited. She pulled out a folder. Emails, screenshots, notes. Turns out Ryan had been manipulating her too, hiding funds, lying about ownership, using her name on contracts she hadn't seen. She was afraid he'd drag her down with him. I skimmed the contents, then looked at her. "You bring this to court and you walk away clean. Don't, and you're part of the problem." She nodded, left the folder, and walked out of my life, hopefully for good. Eliza reviewed the documents. They were gold, proof of consistent fraud, intentional misrepresentation, pattern of financial abuse. We filed immediately, and just like that, our case became federal. Ryan had committed interstate wire fraud. Now it wasn't just a civil suit, it was a criminal investigation. And I was no longer just a plaintiff. I was a witness. Things moved fast after that. Media got louder. More articles, more podcasts, more quiet admiration, DMs from people in his network who once ignored me. Funny how quickly people switch sides when the spotlight changes direction. One evening, I walked out of the office late. Cool breeze, city lights, quiet street, and for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt light. Not because I'd won, but because I hadn't folded. Not when it was ugly, not when it was hard, not when I had every reason to. I stayed, I stood, and now I was ready for the next step, not of revenge, of reinvention. If a man builds his empire on the backs of women who love him, then one day, when those women stand up, the empire falls, and I was done being on my knees. By the 6th month of the legal battle, things were shifting faster than I could keep track. The media wasn't whispering about Ryan anymore. They were dissecting him. Articles titled "From Startup Star to Courtroom Seat" and "What Happens When Founders Lie" were circulating. They quoted filings. They included Maya's affidavit. They even referenced the now infamous podcast clip where he called me emotionally unstable. People weren't siding with him anymore. They were watching him burn. And for once, I wasn't trying to save anyone from the fire. Meanwhile, the business was alive in a way I never imagined. We launched a new beta version of our platform. It wasn't perfect, but it worked, and people signed up. We weren't chasing investors or media attention anymore. We were building something real. Small business owners emailed us saying, "Finally, a tool that doesn't feel like it was built by robots." I hired a part-time customer support rep. Claire became head of ops. We created a company handbook that started with 3 words: "No exploitation allowed." I didn't tell anyone about the moment that truly changed me. It wasn't in court. It wasn't during the interviews. It was on a Thursday morning in a quiet office when I watched 2 women on my team solve a bug I didn't even understand, using tools I never built in a space I made possible. I wasn't the coder, wasn't the face, wasn't even supposed to be here, but I was, and I mattered, because I stopped being someone's wife and started being someone's leader. Then came the national interest. A viral LinkedIn post someone else wrote about me turned into a TEDx talk invitation. A documentary producer reached out. A brand offered to sponsor our next launch if I wore their blazer in the next keynote. I turned most of it down, not because I was afraid, but because I was focused. Ryan had spent his life collecting attention. I was busy building something that could survive without it. One day, Maya emailed again. This time, no panic. Just release. She said she'd moved, was starting over, and thanked me for holding her accountable and not destroying her. I replied simply, "Accountability isn't cruelty, it's respect." And I meant it. Ryan, on the other hand, was falling apart. He filed for bankruptcy. Twice. His lawyer dropped him after missing 2 payments, and the state opened a formal investigation into his handling of investor funds. Fraud, wire transfers, false reporting. His name was being scrubbed from pitch decks all over town. He became what he feared most, forgettable. Then something strange happened. A journalist emailed me, asking for a quote about redemption. Apparently, Ryan had agreed to an interview, said he wanted to make peace with the past, said he didn't handle things perfectly, but we all deserve a second chance. I didn't respond, because redemption isn't a press release. It's not a TED Talk. It's not a comeback story written by someone else. It's who you choose to become when no one's watching, and I didn't need to watch him anymore. Instead, I kept working. We launched our second product line, started an accelerator for women-led micro-businesses. We even set up a scholarship for women re-entering the workforce after divorce. We called it the Restart Fund. Eliza helped with the paperwork. Claire helped with the branding. And I helped by showing up, fully, freely, with nothing left to prove. On the 1-year anniversary of the day Ryan married someone else with my money, I wasn't in court. I was on stage, giving a keynote to a room of 500 women who had lost things, homes, spouses, businesses, and still showed up. I told them, I used to think survival was enough, but now I know survival is the bare minimum. We get to rise, we get to rebuild. And if we do it right, we get to rise together. They clapped, but more importantly, they believed me, because I wasn't speaking from theory. I was speaking from fire. That night, I went home to my small apartment, lit a candle, curled up with my journal, and wrote one line, "This chapter is mine." Because it was, every scar, every scarlet headline, every court date, interview, and breakdown, mine, and finally, I wouldn't trade it. There's a moment after survival where the silence is deafening. You're no longer fighting to breathe. You're just here, alive, alone with the question, what now? For the first time in years, I wasn't waking up thinking about Ryan, or Maya, or courts, contracts, lawyers. I was waking up thinking about impact, what I could do with the pain I just walked through, what I could build from it, not in spite of it, but because of it. It started with a single email. A woman named Danielle wrote to me after reading a blog post I shared on Medium. She said, "I've been where you were. I married someone who used me to get to where he wanted, and now I'm picking up the pieces." I read her message 3 times, then I replied, "You're not alone, and you're not broken, you're just between chapters." That phrase stuck, between chapters. That's what I'd been, that's what so many of us are, not victims, not warriors. Just women standing in the hallway between who we were and who we're becoming. So I bought the domain name, betweenchapters.org, just like that. No strategy, no monetization plan, just instinct. The next few months were a blur of possibility. The business continued to grow, slowly but sustainably. I hired a female CTO. We launched 2 new client features. We crossed $1 million in total billing. But the thing that kept me up at night wasn't the product. It was the inbox. Women writing, dozens of them, telling stories, whispering traumas they'd never said out loud before. One had been swindled out of her inheritance. One had built a house with a man who moved in another woman while she was at her mom's funeral. One had given up a career, a city, a dream, because someone told her, "We'll grow together," and then left. I read every word, and something inside me cracked open. This wasn't just my story anymore. It was ours. So I made a decision. I scheduled a live event, nothing big, just a small gathering, local library, seats for 50. I called it Start Again. No stage, just chairs in a circle, tea, tissues, and truth. I wasn't sure who would show up, but every chair was filled. A few women stood along the wall. One brought her teenage daughter. One brought her divorce papers. One brought cookies. We sat, we spoke. We didn't apologize. And for the first time since the day Ryan said, "Trust me," I felt free. Later that week, I got a call from a publisher. They'd seen the story, the Medium posts, the nonprofit. They wanted a book, not just a memoir, a guide, a call to arms, title suggestion, wife by contract. I laughed, then cried, then said yes. While all this was unfolding, Ryan's name popped up again. Not on my phone, in the news. He'd been spotted at a conference in Vegas. Not speaking, just attending. Someone shared a blurry photo of him in the back row of a panel called Rebuilding Reputation. The irony was almost poetic, but I felt nothing, not rage, not pity, just nothing. And yet 2 days later, an envelope arrived at my office. No return address. Inside was a letter, handwritten, from Ryan Lane. "I've watched you from afar. I've read what people write. I don't know who I am anymore, but I know who you are. You were always the one with backbone. I'm sorry, not because I got caught, but because I was too small to be the man you thought I was. I hope you forgive me, not for me, for you. And if not, I still thank you for everything." I read it twice. Then I fed it through the shredder, not out of cruelty, out of closure. Some stories don't need epilogues. The nonprofit grew. The book deal was signed. I was invited to speak at Harvard. I wore red, walked on stage, looked out at a sea of faces, some young, some gray, all waiting. I began. I was someone's wife. I became someone's tool. Then I became someone's threat. And now I'm just someone. And that is more than enough. That night, I got home to a note on my kitchen table. From Claire. She left a small candle, too. The note said, "You didn't just survive him, you outgrew him." I lit the candle, poured tea, sat by the window, and finally, I exhaled. I never planned on writing a book. It just happened, like healing, like starting over. People kept asking for my story, not just the courtroom version, but the whole thing. What it felt like to be lied to in the middle of making dinner. What it meant to build a company while your husband built a life with someone else. How you put yourself back together, quietly, slowly, fiercely. So I wrote. The day my manuscript was accepted, I didn't pop champagne. I didn't cry. I just stood at the kitchen sink, staring out the window, whispering, "Okay, let's do this." That moment, more powerful than any verdict I'd ever received. The publisher did what publishers do. Photo shoot, PR team, speaking tour. And then the title was finalized. Wife by Contract, How I Reclaimed My Life After Being Legally Used. The tagline, "This isn't a revenge story, it's a reclamation." That was my idea, because by now I didn't want revenge. I wanted resonance. The book dropped on a Tuesday. By Thursday, it was 4 on the nonfiction charts. By Saturday, I was booked for a national morning show. I didn't tell anyone. I just got on the train, hair in a bun, makeup minimal, and answered the host's questions with the calm of someone who no longer owed anyone an explanation. But then, something unexpected happened. The producer leaned toward me during a break and said, "There's someone in the lobby who asked to speak with you. She says she's Ryan's mother." I blinked, then exhaled, then nodded. I found her in a quiet hallway. She looked older than I remembered. Smaller somehow, still dressed like she had money, but her eyes. They were red. We stared at each other for a long moment. Then she said, "I had no idea about any of it." I believed her. She'd always treated me kindly. Too distant to be close, too formal to be warm, but never cruel. I nodded. She reached into her purse and pulled out a photo. It was of me and Ryan, our wedding day. We were laughing. I was in flats. He was holding a paper cup of coffee. I still have this on my mantle, she whispered. I kept it long after he married the other one. I never really accepted her. She paused. I wanted you to know you weren't invisible, not to me. I didn't know what to say, so I said, thank you. She started crying. Not loudly. The quiet kind of cry you do when you're ashamed of how late your love arrived. That night, I wrote a new page for the book website. It said, we're not responsible for the harm others cause, but we are responsible for what we do with the aftermath. And beneath it, a new form for stories, a place for women to submit what they'd been through, anonymous or named, raw or polished. We called it the archive. Within a week, we had 300 entries. Within a month, we had 2,700. We began curating them, publishing a few every week. The ones that spoke of survival, yes, but also the ones that spoke of silence, of shame, of being complicit in our own erasure and choosing not to stay erased. Then came the TED Talk. I wasn't sure I wanted to do it, but Claire looked me dead in the eye and said, you don't do this for you anymore. You do it for the woman sitting in row 7 who hasn't told anyone she's been living with a lie for 5 years. So I did it, and I told the story, not just of betrayal, but of rebuilding. And when I ended with, I was the wife on paper, he was the liar in love, but I became the woman in charge. The applause felt like thunder, like release, like legacy. After the talk, someone handed me a note backstage. No signature, just a message. You told the truth. I finally believe mine matters too. I still don't know who sent it, but I carry it in my wallet. 1 week later, I got a letter from the publisher. The book hit the New York Times bestseller list. I read the sentence 5 times. Then I sat in my kitchen alone and whispered, you made me the contract. I made myself the brand. And I meant every word. Every story needs an ending. But the question is, do you write it or does it write you? I thought I was done. With Ryan, with the past, with everything. But closure isn't a chapter you write once. It's something you choose over and over again. Even when no one is looking, especially then. It had been almost 2 years since the day I got served by reality. 2 years since I found out my marriage was a business transaction dressed in a wedding ring. 2 years since Ryan said, trust me, with a smile that didn't mean love. Since then, everything had changed. The company, thriving, the nonprofit, global, the book, in 9 languages. I had become the woman I didn't know I was allowed to be. Strong, visible, unapologetic. And then the letter came. It arrived in a plain envelope, no return address. Inside, a short note, typed, simple. Ryan is in hospice. He has late-stage pancreatic cancer. He has requested to speak with you. 1 time, no pressure. Signed, the nurse. I read it 3 times, folded it, put it on the table, paced, walked away, came back, made tea I didn't drink. I didn't tell anyone for 3 days. Not Claire, not Eliza, not even my therapist. For 72 hours, I walked around with this weight in my chest. Not guilt, not sympathy, just the echo of something unfinished. And then I booked the flight. The hospice was in Santa Rosa. Quiet, private, the kind of place with white curtains and too many flowers. The nurse met me at the door, young, kind eyes. He's weak, she said, but he's lucid. I nodded. He was smaller. I barely recognized him. His hair had thinned. His eyes were sunken. The hands that once signed contracts with false promises now trembled as they reached for a water glass. He looked up. Lane. I said nothing. He smiled, small, soft. You look strong. Still, I said nothing. He sighed. I didn't call you here to beg or explain or even be forgiven. I raised an eyebrow. He continued. I just wanted to say I remember. I waited. He coughed. The mornings you made coffee without asking. The way you signed those forms and smiled like it was nothing. The time you stayed up until 3 a.m. formatting my pitch deck, even though you had a deadline the next day. I remember all of it. I didn't expect the tears that welled up. Not his, mine, because for once it wasn't manipulation, it was memory. Real, raw, too late, but real. He leaned back. The life I built after you, it collapsed. I nodded. I lost everything. I nodded again. I deserved to. This time I spoke. Yes, you did. He smiled faintly, then closed his eyes. For what it's worth, I never stopped reading about you. He paused. You turned it into something beautiful. You didn't have to, but you did. Silence, then he whispered, "Thank you for that." I didn't say goodbye. I stood, walked out, flew home, and cried the whole way, not for him, but for the girl I used to be, the one who needed this moment for closure, the one who didn't get it until now. When I got back, the team was waiting. Claire hugged me. Eliza sat with me on the floor of my living room with wine and chocolate. We didn't talk about him. We talked about legacy, because that's what I'd built. Not revenge, not justice. Legacy. The next week, I stood on stage for what I thought would be my last keynote. I told the audience. He asked me to come, not to fix him, but to witness what was left. And I did, not because I owed him, but because I owed her. The woman I used to be, who thought silence was strength, who thought survival was the finish line, and who now knows that standing in your story out loud is how we win. Thunderous applause, but this time I didn't cry, because I was already done. That night I drafted my final letter, to the board, to Claire, to the community, announcing that I was stepping down, not disappearing, just stepping aside, because between chapters was bigger than me now, and it deserved to grow without the shadow of my pain. I didn't announce it on Instagram. No fancy exit reel, just an email. Subject line, new season. Inside, thank you for letting me write this one. Now it's your turn. They don't tell you what happens after you win. Not the lawsuit, not the reputation back, not the platform, the applause, the New York Times bestseller badge. They don't tell you what happens after you're done being angry. You wait for peace like it's a destination on a map. But when you get there, it's not a mountaintop. It's a clearing, empty, quiet, still. And you're left asking, what now? It had been 7 months since I stepped away from everything. The company, the nonprofit, the media. I handed over the keys to women I trusted. Younger, sharper, not defined by the wounds I carried. And then I disappeared, not out of fear, out of choice. I moved to a coastal town in Oregon, a place where no one cared what I'd survived. No one looked at me like a symbol. I was just Lane, the woman who walked her dog, who bought groceries at the local co-op, who asked the librarian about poetry recommendations. I found a small cottage to rent, white with navy shutters, overgrown ivy hugging the porch like it was trying to keep secrets warm. It became home. Every morning, I made coffee with oat milk and cinnamon. I'd sit on the porch with Echo, my dog, and journal. Not for content, not for quotes, just because it helped. The first entry I wrote in that new place simply said, "I'm tired of being strong. I want to be soft and safe and invisible for a while." And I let myself be. In town, no one knew my story, at least not at first. Eventually, someone stumbled upon the TED Talk. Whispers started. But by then, I didn't care. The woman on that stage was me, but also a version of me I had already shed. Not less powerful, just complete. I had nothing to prove anymore. And that was liberation. One rainy Wednesday in May, I received a package. No return address. Inside, a paperback copy of my book, dog-eared, filled with handwritten notes. On the inside cover, a letter. Dear Lane, I found your book in a free library box in the Bronx. I read it in one sitting, then again the next night. I thought I was the only one. You saved me, not by being perfect, but by being real. Thank you, C. I didn't know who C was, but I cried. Because every time I thought my words no longer mattered, something like that showed up. Proof that healing ripples, quietly, consistently, often invisibly. But it does ripple. 2 weeks later, I got another letter. This time from Angela. You remember her, Ryan's high school girlfriend. We exchanged a few letters before, shared grief, reflected on the young versions of ourselves we never protected. But this letter was different. She wanted to visit, not to reminisce, to record something, a conversation, for a project she was doing about women who outlived a man's damage. Her words, not mine. At first, I hesitated. Did I want to talk about him again? But then I remembered, this wasn't about him anymore. It was about us, so I said yes. Angela arrived on a crisp Sunday morning, hair shorter than I remembered, eyes clearer. She brought homemade scones and an old recorder. We sat in my garden under the maple tree, sipping tea, letting silence come before the words did. Then she clicked record. "Tell me something," she said. "Who are you now?" I smiled, then answered. Not a wife, not a brand, not even a voice for the voiceless. I'm just someone who kept walking. Someone who didn't let the worst thing done to her be the most interesting thing about her. She blinked, then hit stop. We didn't need more. The tape was complete. That night, I journaled again. This time, the page said, maybe the goal was never healing. Maybe the goal was remembering who I was before I believed I was broken. In late June, I went to the city, just for a few days. Angela invited me to the small gallery where she was curating audio pieces from women around the country. My voice would be one of them, but I didn't go for recognition. I went for reverence because that space was holy. Walls covered in headphones. Each clip, a woman telling her story in her voice, on her terms. No fancy edits, no violins swelling in the background, just truth, and that was enough. Someone approached me quietly during the showing. A young woman, maybe 25, maybe less. She didn't introduce herself. She just whispered, "Your story reminded me that I don't have to stay in the one I'm in now." I squeezed her hand. She didn't cry. Neither did I, but we didn't need to. The knowing was enough. That night, I stayed in a hotel overlooking the river. I opened my laptop, not to write, but to read old emails, ones from the lawsuit. From Ryan's lawyer, from Maya, I didn't feel triggered, just distant, like flipping through a book I'd already outgrown. I selected all, and hit delete. And then I wrote one sentence in a new document. This story is over. The woman who told it is just beginning. I didn't win. I didn't lose. I just walked away and finally kept walking. It had been 1 year since I deleted every trace of Ryan from my inbox. 1 year since I stood in Angela's gallery and whispered, "Thank you," to a woman who wasn't sure if she could leave the life she'd been handed. 1 year since I stopped talking about the past and started simply living. Now I wake up to sunlight filtering through linen curtains. No alarm, no court dates, no headlines waiting, just me, echo, and the ocean humming softly through the open window. I never thought peace would feel this quiet, but here it does. I teach a writing class at the local community center now. Nothing fancy. No branding for survivors course, just writing for real life. I sit in a circle with 12 women, most older than me. Some are divorced, some are widowed. Some have stories they've never told out loud. We write, we laugh, we sip tea and cry sometimes too, but mostly we remember that our words are ours, unfiltered, unmonetized, unrehearsed. One woman, Alina, once said, "Writing is how I forgive myself." And I nodded, because sometimes that's all you need. I still get emails, from readers, from journalists, from women who just found the book and want to say thank you. I read them, I reply to most, but I don't attach myself to the praise anymore. Because praise, like pain, can become a prison if you live inside it too long. One day in early summer, I received a message from Claire. She just had her first baby, a girl. She named her Lane. I stared at the screen for a long time, not because I was overwhelmed, but because I'd never imagined my name spoken without the shadow of Ryan behind it. And now, a new life wore it with no baggage attached. Just possibility. That weekend, I mailed Claire a letter, handwritten. folded around a soft cotton baby blanket I'd quilted myself. Inside, I wrote, "May this lane walk roads without apology. May she know her worth before the world teaches her to question it. May she never have to survive to be taken seriously. And may she never forget, she comes from a long line of women who chose freedom over fear." The next month, the local librarian asked if I'd be interested in doing a reading, just a small one. I hesitated, then said yes. We set up folding chairs in the back room, string lights, lemon cookies someone's grandmother baked. I read a few chapters from my book, the early ones, the raw ones, but when I got to the last page, I closed the book instead and told them something else. I said, "This isn't about the man who used me. This is about the woman I became when I stopped trying to prove I didn't deserve it." They clapped, but one woman in the back cried. She waited until everyone else left, then came up to me and said, "I'm still in it, the story. But now, I believe there's an after." I hugged her, whispered, "There is." And for the first time in a long time, I believed it wasn't just true for me. It was true for all of us. That night, I walked down to the beach with Echo. The tide was low, the air warm. I sat on a piece of driftwood and watched the stars blink into being. And then I pulled a pen from my pocket, wrote a note on the back of a receipt I'd forgotten to throw away. "You taught me what betrayal looks like. I taught myself what healing feels like. We're even." I folded it into a bottle, corked it, and let the ocean take it, not for him, for me, because some goodbyes don't require confrontation, only release. I walked home barefoot, Echo trailing behind, and for the first time, I wasn't walking away from something. I was walking into something, a life, a self, a peace I didn't have to earn. I no longer call myself a survivor, not because I'm not one, but because I'm so much more than what I lived through. I'm a lighthouse, not loud, not angry, just steady, for whoever needs to find their way.